Now, I want you all to go and think. Think of the time when you just finished your final exam, and then you're so happy, and that you can't wait for the party that you already have the next weekend as a big blowout. But then, after a few couple weeks have passed, and then you start hearing those sounds, duh, 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 and you know what's coming. A parent is going to come. It's either mom, dad, or aunt or uncle, and so ready to come and chew you out because you know it's going bad. You can hear those angry footsteps, and they're coming towards you, and you get yelled at again, again, and again, and you don't know why it's happening. And because you already spent so much time studying, why is this always happening to you? Well, one case B is you may have a learning disability. So today, what I'm going to be talking about is one learning disability that has become more well known over the years, and that is called ADHD, or more popular known as attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So, according to the 2017 U.S. National Library of Medicine, Dr. Perez Alvarez noted that ADHD is usually because of a cognitive and mental disability that's been happening in your brain. Now, ADHD has been happening and coming up more common than most years because now there are more studies and there is much more prevalent through kids and adults. So today, what we're going to be discussing is how do people go and develop ADHD? I mean, how does that happen? As along with the different brain functions of it, and we're going to be going and discussing what are the symptoms that someone could have ADHD. Because you may not know you have ADHD, or anyone else may not know. But if you can go and recognize some symptoms, you can maybe take them to see someone and see if they can get tested for that, which would help them down the line and be more helpful in their lives. So today I'm going to be starting off with is how do people go and develop with ADHD? Well, according to the 2000 article ADHD Understand in Young Adults, Dr. Julie Raw and Nelson Dorda, what they found out is that ADHD happens because of the different neurons in your brain. They're not functioning correctly. And the neurons are just those small chemical signals that goes into one part of your brain and goes to another part of your brain. Suppose like if you're eating something or if you're drinking a glass of milk. So what usually happens is with the ADHD is that with the brain, when the neurons, they try to go and get the electrical impulse from one part of the neuron to another part of the neuron, which is normally what happens. However, there's always either a delay or there's also something else that's wrong, or the signal comes too fast, or a signal doesn't come that strong. You can give this as a good analogy. Think of you're plugging in your television screen. You're plugging it right into your outlet, and you expect it to work. But if there's no power coming in, it's not going to work properly. Or if you're only getting electricity some of the time, it's only going to work some of the time. So that's similar with ADHD because if you're not getting the electrical signal as expected, then that's a problem that's going to develop later. So that's a similar analogy. And another thing is that in order to go and get into the signal from one neuron to another, they're called neurotransmitters. And these neurotransmitters are usually known in ADHD as known form as noradrenaline, which is a fight or flight risk. So sort of like if someone pushes you, you can react. That's sort of a fight or flight risk. And you in the sympathetic neuron, which just goes and just sees of how fast something a signal travels without thinking. So it's sort of like if you're going and still talking about them without registering for your brain, it's like, oh, I spoke without thinking. That's usually what happens. And also another form of ADHD that can develop is because of environmental factors. So according to the Isabel article, Do Lifestyles Affect ADHD? Dr. Maria Parado, she noticed that it can happen if you're smoking or even when you just are having people watch TV, because those are two significant things that could happen. And with smoking, it's that according to 2019's Women's article, Smoking During Pregnancy, Dr. Ruta Nonkus noted that because when women smoke when they're pregnant, the fetus goes and reacts to the nicotine, and that's how it affects their brain. And that's how people can develop ADHD. Or with watching television, which is according to the National Institute of Health for Children's Hyperactivity, Dr. Aria Enersary and Robert Cruzon in an article in 2019 commented that having children who watch too much TV or too much of those things, it can also go and affect the brain like that. So those are some of the ways that people can develop ADHD just from right from the get-go. So now we're going to go and move on to, if you have ADHD or you have someone knows that they have ADHD, how do you recognize it? Well, there are several symptoms that you can recognize, such as if you have poor time management skills, poor grades, or if you're going and you're not being attentive enough, or you're always having anxiety or shivering or all sorts of things or jittery, then those are problems that can occur. So it can occur in the prefrontal cortex, which is one part of the brain, or the amygdala, which is the part which helps with the memory part of the brain, which is happens, and it could also be helped in the neuron tension of the brain. So all of those things can go and be as a result of ADHD. Okay, now we've all now finally for closing is that we've all seen from what we learned is that of how ADHD can develop and what are the symptoms of ADHD. So we can see that that if someone has ADHD, it doesn't mean that they're lazy or they're not smart or can't think for themselves. No, that's far from the least. It just means that the brains are not as developed as others. It just needs more time and more patience for the brain to develop even more maturely than other people. That's all. And and here's a good quote from Abraham Lincoln. Upon the subject of education, not pressuring any plan or system, but respecting people's time and engaging is the most important thing. And I think that suits well because for ADHD, they may not learn as well as other people, but they can grasp the knowledge as much as the other people, and they can at least contribute as best as every other person can. And that means that they can benefit you as well as you can benefit them throughout the society and throughout their entire lives. Thank you. Any questions?
Why did you choose this topic? Like, what made you?
Well, I chose this topic because someone close to me has this disability, and I've seen them go through the years of why it's always affecting them negatively. And so we always try to go and help this person out as much as we can.
Oh, go ahead. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. What are your thoughts on in terms of kids who are person who have ADHD and taking pills to control it?
Well, those pills are for medication, and they do help people that stabilize their ADHD and they help manage it. However, they have to consult with their physician first because there unfortunately are other side effects that can harm them instead of helping them. So before someone goes and does that, they need to go and speak to a licensed professional in order to get the proper medication. Because if it does more harm, then it can affect their brain in a negative way and then in a positive way.
I had a question.
Yes.
So you said that you know somebody close to you that has ADHD, and also you've seen the negative side effects. What are some ways that that person or other people can cope with it, or how does it affect their everyday lifestyle with like things that they usually do?
Well, one of the things that for ADHD that it can be managed is that if you're trying to go without medication is to cut down on screen time, like watching TV or looking at the computer. You can also be having more exercise. That's another thing that people can do. Or it can always be engaging with others in conversation and going and helping them and encouraging to meet new people. That's another thing that can help. Also, another thing is that they can go and request help from their other peers of anything else that they can work on. So, such as, like I mentioned, time management. Now, time management is that people are always late for something, and especially prevalent in people who have ADHD. So what they can do is go and use like a timer to say, okay, I need to go to class, or I need to go to the grocery store. That they don't do it at the last minute.
I have two questions,
Oh,
and
sure.
the first one's kind of funny. So I have ADHD, and my aunt used to give me dark chocolate when I was little to get me to focus. She told me that there's something in dark chocolate that helps the brain. did you end up like reading anything about that, or did my aunt lie to me?
No. Well, for dark chocolate, well, not dark chocolate specifically, but some elements in the ingredients of chocolate, it can help go and help you manage with people who have ADHD. Is because there's a certain ingredient that goes inside of it that can help them with it. I can go and read more about that later if you like.
Okay. And then my second question is, if you have ADHD, are you more prone to more mental disabilities?
Well, yes, and that is true. Is that because of the disorder? Is that there is you're a little more vulnerable to anything else that can come across it, but that doesn't mean that it's supposed to be any major harm or anything that can't be managed. It just means that it requires just a little bit more attention than what most people are used to. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Recording stopped.